The Moral Argument for God's Existence, Part 3. We are continuing with the first premise of this argument, and we just got past Euthyphro's dilemma, and so now we'll go on to another objection. This is an objection to the first premise: if there is no God, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Well, some people might throw in there atheistic moral Platonism. What in the world does that mean? Okay, so atheistic means without God, moral, good and evil, right and wrong. What in the world is Platonism? Well, it comes from the idea of Plato. Plato said that what is most real is the world of forms, that there's a world out there of ideas, and those ideas are more real than the physical world that we live in. In fact, Plato would have said what is less real would be something like a rock. It's just purely physical. But what's more real, what's the most real, are things in the realm of ideas. Now, how do we apply this? So what is atheistic moral Platonism? Well, it's the idea that you don't have to have God for morality to exist. Instead, morality just exists in the universe. It's kind of like the furniture of the universe. Just as stars and planets and asteroids and comets and protons and neutrons and electrons and basically everything, just as all that stuff exists in the universe, moral values and duties also exist in the universe, and they're kind of like Plato's world of ideas, that they're in the universe and you don't have to have God for them to exist. Well, and some people would say, well, it's kind of like gravity. You know, gravity just exists. You don't need God for gravity to exist. And maybe morality is like that. Well, there's just a little bit of a problem with atheistic moral Platonism. First of all, atheistic moral Platonism is unintelligible. What do I mean by that? How in the world does a physical universe have these things that are not physical? Let me go a step further. Obviously, somebody who's going to promote atheistic moral Platonism, if you're atheistic, you're probably going to be a naturalist or a materialist, which means everything can be explained by natural causes, and matter is the only thing that counts as real. Then how can you count moral virtues? How can you count moral values and duties as real? That's not even intelligent in an atheistic worldview. It makes no sense. It's absurd. Or how does something like justice exist without persons? You know, the atheistic assumption is that at one point the universe existed without persons at all. Not only were there no human beings, there was no God, there were no angels. So justice is a moral value. Did it exist in the universe before there were persons? If so, how did it exist? How does an abstract idea exist in a physical universe? That's unintelligible. It makes no sense. It's ridiculous. That's another way of saying it. It also has no basis for duty and is improbable. In other words, if moral values do just kind of float around in the universe, if they just kind of exist like gravity, then are you obligated to them? For example, let's say generosity and greed, that those are two moral values floating around in the universe. Why should I choose generosity over greed? What would make generosity better than greed? There's no basis for duty. There's no person to whom that I should perform this duty. Or what about hate? Let's contrast love and hate. What makes love better than hate? Maybe hate. I mean, if both of them exist as moral values, then why can't I choose one or the other? Or envy. maybe envy is one of those things that I could choose. And so you see, this makes no sense to say that morality just kind of floats around in the universe, that it's just there, and we all know it, and you don't have to have God for it. Okay, so these things are unintelligible, they have no basis for duty, and it's improbable. But then some people will throw humanism at you. Humanism. Humanism is the idea, and a lot of atheists default to this today. In fact, one who's coming to my mind is a guy named Sam Harris, who is one of the four horsemen of New Atheism. Sam Harris says that the way that we construct objective morality is by figuring out whatever contributes to human flourishing. Whatever contributes to human flourishing is good, according to Sam Harris. And so that's the way that he tries to figure it out. Well, there are some problems with humanism. By the way, humanism puts human beings at the top. Well, humanism is arbitrary, and it's an implausible stopping point. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, why are you picking humans? If anybody ever says to me, good is whatever contributes to human flourishing, my next question is going to be, well, who says? Who says that human flourishing is good? I mean, why are you valuing humans over anything else? If naturalism is true, if materialism is the way things are, what gives human beings value? I mean, there's really nothing that would value humans over anything else. Why not what I have in the picture there? Why not bubonic plague bacteria? Why don't we say this? Whatever contributes to bubonic plague flourishing is good. I mean, if there's no God, we have no basis to determine one is better than another. Perhaps mass death of human beings during the Black Plague because of bubonic plague bacteria, maybe that actually turns out to be good. You see, humanism is just arbitrary. Who says? Who says that doing good to humans is actually objectively morally good? What happens is, with humanism, you can get a subjective morality, but certainly not an objective one. Not at all. And so this one doesn't work either. All right, so that's the first premise. Let's go to the second one. The second premise, objective moral values and duties do exist. So let me back up. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Premise number 2, objective moral values and duties do exist. Now, here's the great thing. Almost no one denies this. This is a premise that most people in the world are going to agree to. How do we know? Well, and this is the box under, the first box, empty box under premise number 2, if you're filling this in. Moral experience reveals this. It does. Our moral experience tells us that this is true. Now, if you ever get some kind of knucklehead and they say, nuh-uh, objective moral values and duties do not exist, if they just flat contradict you on this one, then here's what you can do. Now, first of all, I guarantee you that that person is either an atheist or a freshman in college, and they probably just took a philosophy class. But if they say that it's subjective, that all morality is subjective, then here's what you do. Just pick some hot button issues. Throw out some things like this. Well, what about the Hindu practice called sati? Sati is where when the husband in the household dies, the wife, who's maybe still alive, would be thrown into the same bonfire where his body was being burned, but she's thrown in alive. Is that objectively, morally wrong, or is that just your opinion that it's wrong? You see? I mean, anybody who says that's not objectively, morally wrong, there's something wrong with them. Or, again, if you've got somebody who's an atheist, you got to be clever with these. Here's another one you could ask. Push their hot buttons. Well, what about the Inquisition? What about when those terrible Christians tortured and murdered all those people during the Dark Ages? Was the Inquisition objectively, morally evil? I mean, just the word Inquisition is going to make an educated atheist start to salivate. There's no way they're going to say, well, it's just my opinion that that was evil. Of course they're going to agree that that was objectively, morally evil. If that one doesn't work, then keep going for the jugular. Well, what about those Roman Catholic priests who molest or rape little boys? Is that objectively, morally wrong? Or is that just your opinion that it's wrong? You see where I'm going with this? Or here, you can use this one. What about being mean to homosexuals? What about oppressing homosexuals? Is that objectively, morally wrong, or is that just your opinion? Might it actually be okay for somebody to oppress homosexuals? Or women's rights? Is it really objectively, morally right for women to get equal pay for equal work? Or is that just your opinion? Now, you see, they're going to agree that some things are objectively, morally right and wrong. And you just got to find those hot button issues if anybody ever disagrees with this premise. All right, I tell you what, I think we're going to look at the rest of this in part 4.